So what happens when you give a Grammy Award-winning producer a fellowship to teach at Harvard University for a year? The result? Well, some lucky students who are enriched with learning about the history of hip-hop and music sampling from a living legend, Ninth Wonder, and a feature-length documentary called The Hip Hop Fellow, chronicling this historic moment when the recognition and integration of hip-hop is pretty much fully accepted as a viable discipline within the academy.
I would get to Harvard at night, stay in the bed and breakfast, get up the next morning, teach class at 10, colloquiums at 12, back to the archive. Right afterwards, and either I would jump on a plane and come back, or I would stay. And that was a majority, if not all, of the year. And just that whole thing, just to say that I'm leaving Duke, one Duke class, and getting on the plane and going to my Harvard class is unbelievable for me to say.
From lecturing to completing a research project, it is a thrill to welcome to the program Patrick Douthit, also known as Ninth Wonder. Good morning, sir.
Good morning. How are you, sir?
I'm doing good. I'm excited to have you here. We saw in that clip you teaching at Duke University as well at the same time as the Harvard Fellowship. What was your biggest challenge here with this fellowship?
I think the biggest challenge was my schedule, just to be able to, like I said, teach at Duke in the afternoon, and sometimes I have to catch the last flight out of Raleigh and go on up to Boston, and then the next morning teach a class, do the colloquium, there's a faculty lunch afterwards, and then get back on a plane, or I would stay and do more research. So that was probably the biggest challenge, and I had to really discipline myself to, to make sure that I stayed on task with that.
Yeah, and this film looks at that. I want to give people a look at who you are and what you were up to. We have a nice clip from it. Take a look.
The props, I have that tape. And he said, no, it's not who got the props. And I was like, it is who got the props. I'm about to tell you, it's my favorite group. He said, no, man, my dad gave it to me. It's Ronnie Laws. Saxophone is jazz funk. The name of the song is called Tidal Wave, off an album called Pressure Sensitive in 1975, actually the year I was born. This is what started my wormhole. This is what started me to dig for records. This is what made me want to know what's going on in the background. Why did they take that song to make this song? What was it about that and that particular part to make them take that part? This is the wormhole that led me here. But it was a very crushing feeling to find out that the things I was listening to and fell in love with came from the 70s. It's kind of a point when you realize that your generation music sucks.
I love that moment there. And you're sharing with people, you're teaching, but you're also explaining how music has taught you. You thought about when you were young being a teacher. Speak about that interplay, because there's some arts that we might enjoy, but music is clearly something a lot of people learn from.
Music is really the universal language, along with the math. I mean, if you think about it, your ABCs is Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, and even when you learn a phone number, you learn about rhythm. So music is really what joins us all, like I said, other than math. And my mom is an educator. She's been an educator for 41 years, and that's kind of where I got it from. And, it extended on to me being a band geek in middle school and high school. And I played sports, but I always loved music. Even when I went to school and I was a history major, I just really turned it over to being a music producer, and later on became a teacher anyway, so everything came around
right,
full circle, right?
Yeah, it all comes together. And the other piece of this, of course, is putting this archive at Harvard, this hip-hop archive. Speak to us about something that runs through the film and your work here, which is the shifting position of, to use a fancy word, hip-hop in the canon, right, or in the academy.
Right.
The academy has a tremendous amount of influence. We talk about that when we think about types of individuals who've been sort of written out of history or literature, or the shift to African-American and women's studies programs. Hip-hop was at one point also, I would argue, isolated that way, but no more.
Exactly. I mean, we're in a situation where hip-hop is not really in a lot of books at this particular point. We're writing the history as we go along. Like my big brother DJ Premier says, this is, this is still a young culture. As a matter of fact, we're writing history because today is, we celebrate the death of Notorious B.I.G., Christopher Wallace, on March 9th, 1997. So that's a part of history that we really need to talk about because he was a poet, he was an MC, and he was a shape in our culture. So that's what it is. It's about making it relevant and putting it in the proper space it needs to be in, even at Harvard.
And let me ask you that. That's something I've always wondered about. If you really like rap, then you listen to the lyrics, they get in your head. If you read about them, if you read Jay-Z's Decoded or you go on Rap Genius, every line has 10 more lines of analysis, right? Which is not unlike Shakespeare or any literature where there's so much meaning in the depths below. Why do you think there's been such a divide in the culture where mainstream culture has at times simply not understood that and said this is noise, this is just simple lyrics?
Right. I think with hip-hop, it's attached to the community. I mean, even when we talk about the 1960s and the 1970s, where hip-hop came from soul, hip-hop is still connected to the community as far as the metaphors and the similes that's used. I mean, hip-hop is a very deep, interlaid, just a very, very deep culture as far as the lyrics are concerned. Just because the MC says one thing, you really have to look at the things they're actually saying, but not looking at it from the surface. And that's the thing about the lyrics that can be studied on down the road. I mean, even they thought Shakespeare was vulgar in his time, right? And when the groundlings in the 1600s thought it was a vulgar situation, but we study him now. And
Ninth Wonder, I am sad to say we're out of time. Otherwise, I'd spend a lot more time with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, that is our show for today. Thank you at home for watching. Nerdland will be back next Saturday at 10 a.m. Eastern. Weekends with Alex Witt is up next. Stay tuned.